I mean, obviously the NBA was always the main goal. I don't have really any regrets. I don't really even think about the NBA much. Jim Boylan kind of like subbed me in the game early, told me he wanted me to be like 3 and D, like a role player. I didn't really understand, like, what do you mean? Like, you know, I want the ball. But he was kind of trying to help me. But at the time I was so young, I didn't really get to understand, like, that what gets you paid in the NBA.
This is one of the most unique stories you will see in basketball today. A McDonald's All-American, not just a McDonald's All-American, but outscoring players like Jalen Brunson and Jaylen Brown in the game, to winning Mr. Basketball in Florida, a stacked state filled with up-and-coming talent and future NBA players. He was Florida's chosen one, and it didn't stop there. 2 seasons at LSU, one of the biggest basketball schools in the country, proving himself over and over again as one of the top scorers in the nation, one of the more gifted players that we will cover on this channel, probably the hardest worker. But if you follow this channel, you know that it's not just about talent. Who makes it is a combination of things. Timing, the class you come out of, your skill set, your coach, who believes in you. If you don't know by now, we're talking about Antonio Blakeney. And for him, he's seen the highest of highs, and unfortunately, he's witnessing the lowest of lows, with a serious allegation on his jacket that, if true, if he's convicted, he's facing up to 20 years in prison. Now, that's not until later in the video, but I can give a little bit more insight on that topic because I was faced with the same thing in my career. So let me just say this disclaimer before we start the video. Athletes out there, just say no. Being on the inside, trust me, I know that we do get approached. People do ask us, and there's a lot of negative influences around the game that may look like wins up front, right? It may look like something that you might need at the moment. Just say no. I'm doing the anti-gambling ad, which is probably hurting my bottom line going forward, but I'm doing it for you guys. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. I'm putting my earning potential on the line for your entertainment. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, let's skip the boring stuff and let's get right into the video. Antonio Blakeney was born in New York and at an early age moved to Sarasota, Florida. Sarasota is a city located in the southwest region and is technically the 5th largest metropolitan area in Florida. The city's economy is based on tourism, healthcare, education, and real estate. It's the home of the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. He credits his tough style of play to the upbringing he had. At early ages on the playground, he was playing pickup basketball against the older kids in the neighborhood. You know, the kind of games where you're the smallest kid, you might get knocked down, they tell you, man, get up, stop acting soft. You know, you go up for a layup, they spinning your shot against the backboard. Yeah, that was his upbringing. He was always active in basketball and football, but pretty much throughout his childhood, he thought he was going to be an NFL football player, stating that that was his main sport he was focused on. And it wasn't until the 7th grade where he really saw basketball as an avenue of something that he can see himself doing for the long term. Now, one thing I'll say about Antonio, even before I did my research on him for this video, just his reputation as a hooper, I feel like he's one of those outwork you type of hoopers. Don't get me wrong, he's also physically gifted. He's got around a 45-inch vertical. His agility test is off the charts. Like, his pre-draft workouts were phenomenal. But some people's game, it just looks very natural. You know, it's like a smooth game. With Antonio, I feel like you can for sure tell that you worked for everything that you have. It's just something that a hooper picks up on, the guys that are just workers, and he for sure is like that. His high school coach pretty much changed the course of his basketball career. That same work ethic that I spoke on, his high school coach identified that and pulled him aside when he was in the 8th grade and said to him, you deserve to take the most shots on the team because nobody works harder than you. And that's something that me as a basketball trainer now, I identify with, because I tell my kids that all the time. You're waking up at 6 a.m. working out, you're doing team practice, and then you're coming back to the gym at 8 p.m. working out. Who is more deserving to make decisions with the basketball? Who is a coach going to trust more than you? You have the complete green light at that point, especially at that young age. So growing up, the hard work gave him the confidence, and he pretty much knew that he was going to be an NBA player in a legendary pickup run when he was in the 11th grade. It was summertime, and all the older Florida-born NBA players were back in the gym. Austin Reeves, Courtney Lee, those kinds of guys. And while he was by no means dominating the pickup, he was holding his own, and he was able to get some buckets off. That was the point where he told himself, I can actually do this, man. If this is where I'm at 16 years old, by the time I'm these guys' age, I'll be at the same level as them. And he was right. He pretty much was on a fast track to a pro career. And not only a pro career, but an NBA career. By the time he was a senior, like I said, he was a McDonald's All-American. He was ranked the #4 shooting guard prospect by ESPN and pretty much had every college interested in him. Funny enough, at that time, he was playing AAU basketball with Ben Simmons, his future LSU teammate. In his senior year, he actually gave a verbal commitment to play basketball at Louisville. Funny enough, he decommitted from Louisville, which opened up a guard spot for none other than Donovan Mitchell. Blakeney instead chose the LSU route where his AAU buddy Simmons was playing at. The two figured that, hey, we're the top 2 guys in Florida. If we go to a program like this, which hasn't really been great since the Shaquille O'Neal days, we can turn it up, we can make some noise, and we can both go first round NBA draft. In his freshman year at LSU, he was the 3rd leading scorer behind Simmons and Hornsby. And while he showed that he can score it with the best of them in a tough conference like the SEC, scouts weren't 100% sold on the shot making ability, the efficiency. There were still problems that they saw, which held him back from being a one and done prospect like he had thought he was going to be. So he comes back for his sophomore year. In his sophomore year, he kills it. I'm talking about all SEC, second team selection, leading scorer at LSU, 17.2 points per game. But it was at LSU where I really saw that disconnect. The signs of maybe his NBA role is not fully understood. And like I always say in these videos, these young prospects, man, is really a lot on their plate. You're expected to know what the NBA wants out of you at the age of 18, 19. Like, these guys are still young. They still want to play how they want to play. Like, they don't want to play the way that you think they should play, because that might be a boring brand of basketball. And so for Blakeney, I feel like boring wasn't his style. Like, when you watch the tape, as I said, he's such a hard worker. You can tell how hard he works by the way he plays, but it's almost like he can make 100 difficult shots. Every single shot will look different than the previous one. Whereas I feel like a great future NBA player is gonna score the same way 100 times, right? You know what he's going to do. You know what you can expect from him every single night, and he's going to do it at a high efficiency clip. Plus, watching him play, you always got the sense that he wasn't getting it in the flow of the offense. Almost like the offense had to be revolving around him. Hezzy pulls, stop and pop over multiple defenders, breaking guys down in a 1v1. He was a demon in transition, but again, it's not in the flow of the offense. Early offense was more his style. Broken plays is more his style, right? When the shot clock is still at 15, 20 seconds, not necessarily gonna be the brand of basketball that NBA teams are gonna want to play. And I think he fell into that trap a little bit. So after his second year at LSU, he would take his talents to the NBA. In 2017, he declared for the NBA draft, a time for a player that is the most exciting part of your career, right? It's just about to get started. You go into your draft workouts. As I mentioned before, he's killing in the pre-draft process. As the process went on, he saw his name slip further and further down the draft boards. And in the 2017 NBA draft, he would end up going undrafted. Now, that's something that he said later on that put a huge chip on his shoulder. Growing up, his favorite player was Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal was a top guy, lottery pick, scorer, #1 option. Those are what he strived to be coming into the draft process. So once he went undrafted, in my opinion, he did a great job of switching his mentality from, all right, I'm not Brad Beal today. Maybe right now I gotta be Fred VanVleet and prove to these guys that I'm a diamond in the rough. I'm one of those guys that you missed out on. You should have drafted me. Every team that I play, I'm gonna kill them because you guys didn't get me. So that year at the Summer League, he didn't really have the opportunities because, as we know, in Summer League, it's for the guys that got drafted. They're gonna get the best shot. It doesn't matter what you did in high school. It doesn't even matter what you did in college. They're gonna give their lottery picks the first shot, boom, do your thing. And then you gotta be behind the guys that were in the lottery the previous year. They do their thing. And then now you gotta worry about the second rounders and everybody. So the first few games, he couldn't even get his feet wet. It wasn't until the middle of Summer League where things started to pick up for him. And by the end of the Summer League, the Bulls came and got him. But that was something that added a little bit more fuel to the fire, and his work ethic got taken up a notch. There was never a time where Blakeney wasn't the main scorer or one of the main scorers on a basketball team. And his coach at the time, Fred Hoiberg, even gave him a lot of responsibility in the offense, especially for an undrafted rookie. Sure, he would come off the bench, but he was coming off the bench when all the starters weren't in the game. So he had his little time to pick his spots. He had his opportunities to do what they know him to do. However, this is now the NBA, and this kind of opportunity can be a gift and a curse. Because as he said in the beginning of this video, if he knew what he knew now, having a role in the NBA gets you paid. Sure, being a bench scorer is a role, but that's also a role that's dependent on so many different factors, right? That you cannot control. You cannot control the coaches and how they see you. You cannot control the unit that you come in with. You cannot control sometimes if shots go down, especially when you're shooting a lot of jump shots. You cannot control if you get fouls or not. So you got to get that whistle too. So even though Fred Hoiberg gave him some responsibilities, at the same time, the best thing for his career was not the scorer off the bench. The best role was, as is with everybody in this channel so far, everybody that I covered on Overseas Reality so far, if they just became a 3-and-D guy, they would still be in the NBA. I think the coaches in the NBA wanted to see one or the other. Either you're going to be a traditional PG, get a setup in offense, play 94 feet of defense, or only be a 3-and-D guy, off-ball guy. It's funny because I have a lot of overseas viewers on this channel, and all my international guys, you guys can write in the comments and let me know what you think about this. International viewers probably look at these kinds of stories and they don't understand. Why is it so hard to transition into being a 3-and-D guy? And let me tell you why. The international game and the American game are so different. In America, we're taught the game individually. You work on your game in private, and then you bring what you worked on in private into our team environment, and we each play and do what we worked on while we're in the game. I've even seen at the youth levels and high school levels, college levels for sure, they will build a whole team around one person's skill set. And so when you're the one person that people have been building teams around your whole career, it shapes how you look at things. Like, it's hard to go back into being the other guy. And those other guys existed your whole career, but you didn't care about them because you were the best player. Whereas overseas, and especially places like Europe, which I have the most experience in because I played there for 9 years professionally, they're taught in the system. Like, the system is the star. The coach that draws up the system is the mastermind, right? We're just cogs in a machine when they're playing in Europe. So they're developing with those concepts. They're just a piece of the puzzle. They're not the entire puzzle. All players, especially at the youth levels, can play every position because everybody's interchangeable. Everybody understands exactly what we're trying to do in the game plan. That's why overseas, the coaches get praised so much. It's because they designed the system. But guys like Blakeney could have easily been an NBA All-Star and had a great run like a Bradley Beal. The talent is there, but look who he had in front of him on that Chicago Bulls team. This is why I say fit and timing is so important in the NBA process. He was behind guards like Zach LaVine, Denzel Valentine, Chris Dunn, Justin Holiday. And then once you get past those guards, you still had to throw the ball down low and give the ball up on the wing to guys like Nikola Mirotic and Lauri Markkanen. Even with that, you can't really call his time in the league a failure because we're looking at NBA career averages of 15 minutes per game, 7.5 points per game in those limited minutes, 40% field goal, which is not great, but look at the team he was on, and 35% from the three. But I think the biggest thing was he was fighting that identity so hard. Fighting internally between what I want to do and what everybody else wants me to do. Everybody else wants me to pick a lane and stay there, pick a role, traditional PG or 3-and-D. Me, I want to be Bradley Beal. But year one, he showed his flashes. By the time his second year in the NBA came around, his head coach Fred Hoiberg got fired after just 24 games. And they brought in Jim Boylen, who essentially only got called up on so he can go 17-41 for the rest of the season. Yeah, they were in the middle of a tank job. I think it's clear what Boylen was trying to establish here. Before I said there was a choice between traditional PG and 3-and-D, but I'm pretty sure Boylen wanted strictly 3-and-D from Blakeney. He looked at the roster and said, yeah, we're clearly going to tank, but let's see if we have a star in Lauri Markkanen, who was 21 years old at the time and putting up a 20-10. But he also had LaVine, still was only 23 years old, and even if he wasn't going to be a Bull for life, they were at least going to let him get his empty stats up because, again, tanking, you're going to need somebody that's going to have some trade value. On top of all of that, Jabari Parker, the hometown hero, Chicago's prodigal son, was returning back that year, which made the depth chart even more complicated to crack. Boylen wanted Blake to be a 3-and-D guy. Even if you weren't going to be that here, that's your key to being in the league. And he actually shot the three ball well that year, shooting 39.6% from three, but he still was slightly holding on to this idea in his mind that he was going to be a Bradley Beal. Ball ended up sticking a little bit longer than they wanted it to when it got to his hands, and he still was taking about 7 twos per game versus only 1.6 threes per game. And now this stat right here says a lot about his time in the league. In his 57 games in the NBA, he shot the ball 396 times. The amount of total passes, not assists, total passes that he gave during that time frame was 432. Let that sink in.